At 3:42 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, the phone rang. Sharon Phillips reached for it in the darkness, her pulse already pounding against her ribs. After 17 years of quiet, after countless false leads and broken expectations, she had taught herself not to hope. But hope, persistent and unrelenting, still lived somewhere behind her meticulously constructed defenses. Mrs. Phillips, this is Detective Rachel Moreno with the Tulsa County Cold Case Division. Sharon's hand shook as she grasped the receiver tighter. 17 years of speculating, of picturing every awful scenario, of lying awake recalling those last hours since that October evening in 2004 when her daughter Brittany left out their front door in Broken Arrow and never returned. We found him, 300 miles away in a peaceful suburban home with faded blue shutters. Motion sensor lights flickered on as officers took their positions. Within, a 56-year-old guy was awakening to the sound of heavy boots on his porch. For almost 2 decades, he had lived with the secret, thinking time had made him untouchable. Tulsa County sprawls across northeastern Oklahoma, a scene of crimson dirt and grassland dotted with oil derricks and urban sprawl. Broken Arrow was on the county's southern tip in 2004. A burgeoning suburb of young families drawn by excellent schools and low-priced homes. It was the type of location where neighbors knew one another's names. Youngsters biked until the streetlights came on. Doors were left unlocked. Everything changed then when Brittany Phillips vanished on a 15-minute journey to the nearby convenience store 3 blocks from her home. Her case haunted the officers who had worked it and lived in filing cabinets for 17 years. Children grew up hearing whispered cautions about the young lady who disappeared. The Phillips family burned their porch light every night, a lighthouse for a daughter who never returned. Technological development happened. The planet changed, yet certain objects stayed stationary in time. Sharon never altered Brittany's room. The neighborhood never stopped questioning, and somewhere out there, hiding behind a normal existence, a murderer walked free. Until now. Before we delve into this case and the remarkable breakthrough that at last brought justice, please let me know where you're seeing from in the comments below. These accounts of people all across the country feel reach via perseverance and justice, therefore I delight in seeing Brittany's tale journey. Born on Valentine's Day 1986 to Sharon and David Phillips, she was their sole child, much loved and shielded in equal degree. Those who knew her said someone who had not yet found her footing. Unlike the confident, driven young lady, Brittany Ann Phillips was 18 years old in October 2004, standing at that gateway between adolescence and adulthood where the future felt both horrifying and limitless. In the analyzed case, Brittany was quieter, still trying to determine who she wished to become. She graduated from Broken Arrow High School last May, marching across the platform to receive her degree as her parents enthusiastically cheered from the bleachers. She had decided to take a year off, work, and save money so that she might get to know what delighted her, something that felt like her path, not ours. That fall, Brittany worked at a local daycare center, spending her days with toddlers who adored her patient, gentle nature. The job paid barely above minimum wage, but she loved it. Coworkers remembered her arriving early, staying late, playing elaborate games with the children during outdoor time. She had a gift for calming fussy babies, for making shy kids laugh. Life in Broken Arrow in 2004 moved with suburban predictability. The town had grown rapidly through the 1990s, transforming from a modest village into Tulsa's biggest suburb. Strip stores lined the major roads, new residential projects sprung across former agriculture land. Still, it kept that small-town mentality whereby everyone appeared related by only 1 or 2 levels of separation. Brittany's routine was rather basic. She started her Little Sprouts daycare shift early, worked until 3, then returned home to help her mother make dinner. Brittany would spend evenings either watching television, chatting on the phone with high school friends, or working on the complex scrapbook she made as presents for family members. She didn't like going out, choosing instead quiet evenings at home. She was a homebody, her father David said. Though her friends would invite her to parties or to go to Tulsa, she typically declined. She was at home with us and at ease. Brittany had attended her cousin's wedding in Stillwater the weekend before she went missing. Photos from that day show her wearing a pale blue gown and laughing subtly at the camera, her long brown hair flowing down her shoulders. She seemed young, nearly fragile, stuck in that awkward phase where you're not sure how to hold yourself for images. Nobody viewing that picture could have known it would become the face on missing person flyers plastered across northeastern Oklahoma for years to come. Tuesday, October 12, 2004, began unremarkably. Brittany's alarm sounded at 6:30 according to her mother. She was clothed and eating breakfast by 7. The October morning carried the first real chill of autumn, leaves beginning their transformation from green to gold and crimson. She left for work at 7:45, driving the 10-year-old Toyota Corolla her parents had given her for graduation. The daycare was only 2 miles away, an easy commute through residential streets. She arrived at 7:58, clocking in on time as always. The day proceeded normally. Brittany helped with morning circle time, changed diapers, supervised lunch, led the afternoon craft project involving construction paper leaves and glue stick. Her supervisor observed nothing odd about her conduct or behavior. She appeared her usual self, quiet but involved, patient with the children. At 3:15, she checked out and drove home, arriving at the Phillips house on Elm Street by 3:30. Her father was managing a hardware store across town. Her mother was working a day shift at St. Fran's Hospital and wouldn't be home until 6. Phone records showed Brittany phoned her friend Jessica Martinez at 4:23. She talked for 11 minutes, about nothing particular, plans to maybe see a film this weekend, chatter on mutual acquaintances. Jessica would later admit to investigators Brittany seemed normal, maybe somewhat exhausted from work, but nothing appeared amiss. Brittany dialed her mother's cell phone around 6:45. Sharon was driving home from the hospital, caught in traffic on Highway 51. Less than 2 minutes passed during the call. She said she would walk to the Rapid trip to get a Diet Coke and some chips. Sharon remembered her voice catching even 17 years later. I said, she laughed and stated, "It was 3 blocks, Mom, not 3 miles." Those were the last words she said. Based on the timeline created by police, Brittany left the house at some time between 6:50 and 7. The walk to the Quick Trip on South Elm Street should have taken no more than 15 minutes, straight down Elm, across the parking lot of the closed furniture store, past the elementary school playground, then 3 blocks to the convenience store. Still light outside, that dusky time when the sun has sunk but darkness hasn't totally arrived. Streetlights were beginning to flutter on. Viewers of the neighbors were walking dogs, receiving mail, doing garden work, delighting the nice evening weather. Mrs. Chen, who lived 4 houses down from the Phillips family, informed police she saw Brittany strolling past about 7 o'clock. She waved and Brittany waved back. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She was walking at a typical pace, wearing denim and a red Oklahoma University hoodie, earbuds in her ears. That would be the last reported sighting of Brittany Phillips. Sharon Phillips returned home at 7:35 to discover the property vacant. She wasn't too concerned, thinking Brittany was either at the store or had met a friend. She began making supper, expecting the front door to open any time. She tried calling Brittany's cell phone by 8:15. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She left a message, trying not to sound worried. Sharon phoned David at the hardware shop at 8:45 when darkness was now total and food on the table was cooling. He sped home and joined Brittany's supposed route, searching for any indication of their daughter. In the darkness, the short trip was vividly lit, fluorescent, and fierce. Inside, they asked the clerk on duty if he had observed a young woman fitting Brittany's description. He nodded his head. The evening had been drawn out. David Phillips was on the phone with the Broken Arrow Police Department by 9:30, reporting his daughter missing. Officer Miguel Santos arrived at the home by 10 o'clock, documenting information with the deliberate patience of someone who had handled dozens of these calls. Most missing young adults turned up within hours, staying too late at a friend's house, losing track of time. But Santos's face shifted when he discovered Brittany's car was still in the driveway, her purse still on her bed, her jacket still hanging by the door. Teenagers who had made up their minds to stay out late were something else. Search operations began by midnight. Officers retracing the route with flashlights knock on doors and interrogate neighborhood inhabitants for any odd sightings that night. Brittany's cell phone was pinged, but consistent with her being in the vicinity when she left, the final signal had come from a tower near her home. Friends from high school and parents from the daycare, neighbors who hardly knew the Phillips family but felt drawn to assist. They searched gardens and deserted lots, checked garbage cans and drainage channels, and shouted Brittany's name till their voices dropped. A finding on Thursday afternoon, October 14th, stopped every seeker in their steps. It was Brittany's Oklahoma University sweatshirt, trapped in the shrubs close to the former maintenance shed. She was wearing the hoodie as she left home. There was no struggle visible, no blood, no apparent damage on the hoodie. It just lay there deliberately folded as though someone had placed it. Inside the front pocket, police discovered Brittany's house key and a crumpled $5 bill. The finding changed the missing person case into anything darker. Detective James Wu of the Broken Arrow Police Department assumed control and formed a task force that would consume the ensuing few months of inquiry. The hoodie and the area surrounding the maintenance shed were treated by crime scene technicians. Though canine units examined the school grounds and nearby woodlands, Brittany herself was still missing, gone in a 15-minute walk meant to be typical and secure. As October turned into November and the first frost fell over northeastern Oklahoma, the hunt went on, frantic and ever more depressing. Finding solace in habit and predictability, Brittany Ann Phillips had always been a creature of habit. While other 18-year-olds resisted discipline and sought to reinvent themselves, Brittany found security in knowing what each day would bring. Her parents had occasionally worried that she was too careful, too unwilling to take risks or defy convention. They would now do anything to have worried about that again. Brittany, who had grown up in Broken Arrow, was a quiet presence in her school hallways, not popular but not hidden either. She existed in that center space where most teenagers live. Though mostly unknown to the general student body, Brittany was a member of a tiny circle of close friends. She was sweet and solid, remembered Amy Patterson, who had several classes with Brittany during high school. Her yearbook is full of generic well wishes and great summer messages instead of inside jokes or statements of lifelong friendship. She would come sit with you at lunch. She was just extremely nice. Her employment at Little Sprouts Daycare, where Director Margaret Chen had engaged her in June 2004, despite her lack of official childcare experience, also showed that warmth. Brittany had something during the interview, a patience and gentleness that cannot be taught, that made Margaret sure she would be perfect for the post. Some people are natural with children, Margaret said. Brittany was one of them. She never became angry when a toddler had a fit of rage. She might spend an hour assisting a shy 3-year-old come out of their shell. The youngsters loved her. Her co-workers recalled little things that now had unbearable significance. How Brittany constantly brought homemade cookies for the break room. How she volunteered to work the concluding shift so mothers with their own children could get home sooner. How she saved every card the daycare children created for her, keeping them in a unique box under her desk. Brittany had attended her the weekend before she went, the nuptial of cousin Rebecca in Stillwater, 90 minutes north of Broken Arrow. Saturday morning, the Phillips family had driven up, Sharon debating whether Brittany's dress was suitable. David, before they departed, checked the tire pressure of the car twice. Rebecca remembered Brittany appearing pleased that day, dancing with their grandfather, laughing at the best man's speech, catching the bouquet at the customary toss. Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face throughout her police interview, laughing and said she needed to find a boyfriend now.
The photographs from that wedding became rather important to the inquiry, since they provided the most recent images of Brittany, showing her appearance just 72 hours before she vanished. She seems youthful and uncertain in them, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, as though she was not fully comfortable being photographed. Her long brown hair falls over her shoulders, split in the center. She wore very little cosmetic. Her narrow frame hung loosely over the pale blue dress. Sunday and Monday passed quietly. Brittany worked her daycare shifts, went home, assisted with dinner, watched television with her parents. Nothing seemed different or erroneous. She made no strange phone calls, sent no mysterious text messages, gave no sign that anything was worrying her. Tuesday morning, her last morning, Sharon had prepared pancakes for breakfast. It was a little indulgence, a weekday treat for no particular purpose. Sharon said, her voice almost in a whisper, seeking to recall if there was anything, any little indicator I missed, but there was nothing. It was just an ordinary Tuesday. They ate together at the kitchen table, talking about trivial matters. Brittany mentioned that one of the daycare children had learned to tie his shoes. Sharon discussed a difficult patient at the hospital. I've replayed that breakfast 1,000 times. David had left for work first at 7:30, giving both his wife and daughter farewell. He remembered Brittany still in her pajamas planning to shower after he left. That was the final time he saw her. Phone records, computer logs, and witness accounts recreated the hours between Brittany arriving home from work at 3:30 and departing for the quick journey around 7. She had read celebrity gossip websites and checked her MySpace page online. She had called her friend Jessica, a call both girls described as totally normal. According to neighbor testimony, Brittany departed the house right about 7 o'clock, as the October evening shifted from dusk to darkness. Across the street, Mr. Rodriguez had been bringing in his trash cans. He observed Brittany walking south on Elm Street towards the main road, with earbuds trailing white cords to the iPod Shuffle clipped to her waistband and hands in the pockets of her red hoodie. Mrs. Chen's sighting 4 houses down came moments later. Brittany walked around Walnut Avenue, past the shuttered furniture store with its empty parking lot, and vanished from sight. Something transpired somewhere in the next 3 blocks, in that 15-minute window between 7 and 7:15. Somebody happened. A life full of little routines and silent dreams was abruptly disrupted, and an 18-year-old girl who had never hurt anyone simply ceased to exist in the world of the living. The finding of the folded hoodie on Thursday afternoon, Detective James Wu of the Broken Arrow Police Department stood at the crime scene behind the elementary school and felt his stomach turn. The methodical way the garment had been positioned, the key and money left in the pocket, spoke to something purposeful and sinister. Shattered whatever weak hope remained that Brittany had just walked off or was lodging with a friend she hadn't informed her parents about. The property where scrubby woods replaced the playground equipment would be apparent to anybody on the playground or going the perimeter during school hours.
At 7 in the evening on a Tuesday in October, however, with the school closed and darkness descending, it would be thoroughly isolated. This location was selected meticulously, Wu informed his team that evening during the briefing. Whoever did this knows the area, knows the school schedule, knows when this spot would be empty. The forensic team carefully examined the hoodie, looking for hairs, fibers, DNA, anything that might point who had handled it apart from Brittany. The results would take weeks, painfully slow as they made their way through the understaffed state crime lab. Early results disappointed me. Brittany's DNA was recovered from the hoodie along with her fingerprints on the cuffs and zipper, but nothing else immediately helpful. October had been dry, the earth hard and unreceptive to footsteps. The ground surrounding the maintenance shed told no more distinct narrative. Cigarette butts found close were gathered and cataloged, but with the school being a public area, many people could have dumped them over the last few weeks. The inquiry spread in every direction as October turned into November. Detective Wu put together a task force comprising officers from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and the Tulsa County Sheriff's Department. Though they stopped short of officially taking over the case, the FBI was alerted. Of every missing person case are critical. Those hours had already gone. Now the investigation entered its grinding, methodical phase, pursuing hundreds of leads that branched and multiplied like a vast, confusing tree. Every registered sex offender within a 30-mile radius was interviewed, their alibis checked and rechecked. Brittany's computer was seized and analyzed, her MySpace messages and email correspondence scrutinized for any hint of contact with strangers or secret relationships. Her phone records were analyzed intensively. Every number discovered was drawn and its owner was interrogated, not for what it revealed, but for what it didn't. The Quick Trip surveillance video became a key item of proof. Frame-by-frame review of the footage from the entrance and parking lot was done for the whole evening of October 12th. Brittany Phillips never appeared. She never reached her final destination. This shrank the range significantly. She had been spotted leaving her home at 7, walking south on Elm Street. The short excursion was only 3 blocks distant. Somewhere along that short distance, measured in steps and minutes, she had met her abductor. Investigators marched the route numerous times at various periods of day, studying sightlines and probable hiding places. The locked furniture store offered opportunities. Its deserted parking lot and loading docks cast shadows where someone could lurk unnoticed. The elementary school, with its vast grounds and numerous buildings, afforded many blind spots. "We're hunting for someone who had Brittany vanished entirely in a matter of minutes," Wu said to journalists during a press conference in late October. "She kept going forward instead. She was kidnapped." The community reaction was instant and all-consuming. Local television channels ran Brittany's picture on every newscast. The Phillips family set up a tip hotline. Most leads went nowhere as hundreds of calls from people who believed they had seen something, recalled something, knew something, came. A woman in Owasso swore she had seen Brittany at a gas station 3 days after the abduction, but security footage showed it was someone else. A psychic called, claiming Brittany's body was in a particular location, sending searchers on an unsuccessful trip through forests 30 miles distant. Nevertheless, the detectives followed every lead with persistence and thoroughness, knowing that somewhere in the noise could be the answer. The first category of suspects included men with criminal records in the Tulsa County area. Oklahoma's sex offender registry listed one signal that mattered. The first investigation into Brittany Phillips's disappearance consumed the Broken Arrow Police Department through the winter of 2004 and into 2005. Detective Wu's task force generated hundreds of reports, conducted over 300 interviews, and executed 21 search warrants. Every lead, no matter how tenuous, was pursued with grim determination. Each of the 43 people found within a 20-meter radius of Broken Arrow was taken in for questioning. Their location on October 12th was painstakingly verified. Most offered strong alibis. A few had discrepancies in their claims that needed more investigation. Early person of interest was Dennis Kruger, a 47-year-old mechanic who had a 1998 sentence for indecent exposure. He lived 6 blocks from the Phillips house and had no verified alibi for the night Brittany vanished. He said that he had been at home alone watching TV. Wu kept him under observation for weeks, hoping he would make a mistake, even though a search of his car and house turned up nothing linking him to Brittany. Brittany's relationships with other people were investigated in the second class. Unlike many missing person incidents, this was rather simple. Brittany hadn't been dating any. She had no ex-boyfriends with hate inside. Her social network was limited and rather explained for. Co-workers at the daycare were extensively interviewed, as were her high school friends and far-off family members. None raised alarm bells. In some aspects, that made it more challenging, Wu remarked years later.
You have somewhere to concentrate when there is an obvious suspect near the victim. We were starting from scratch with Brittany, examining the entire male population of Northeast Oklahoma. The investigation extended to cover transient employees and tourists to the area. A construction team had repaving portions of Highway 169 that October. A traveling sales convention had brought hundreds of strangers to Tulsa the week Brittany went missing. Every angle was followed, producing extensive documentation but little concrete leads. The hunt for Brittany's remains, meanwhile, went on. Cadaver dogs traversed woodland regions and parks in grid patterns. Divers investigated retention ponds and the Arkansas River. Hunters and landowners were urged to notify anything odd on their land. The searches became fewer frequent as winter settled in, yet they never entirely stopped. By spring 2005, 6 months after the FBI reduced its involvement in Brittany's disappearance, with the Broken Arrow Police Department, the case remained open and active. But the daily momentum had stopped. Detective Wu carried on work on it with other cases, but the flood of tips had slowed to a trickle. The Phillips family refused to embrace silence. Sharon gave up her nursing career to fully dedicate herself to uncovering answers. She learned to negotiate bureaucracy, submitting Freedom of Information Act inquiries, advocating for more funding. More than 400 people gathered at the elementary school where Brittany's hoodie had been discovered on the 1-year anniversary of her disappearance. They lit candles as night came, generating a river of light spanning the grounds. Sharon addressed the throng, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. David returned to work but looked hollowed out, going through the motions of his life while his thoughts stayed in October 2004. Although my daughter is still gone, I have not given up hope. Somebody is informed about something, someone noticed something, and the truth will eventually emerge. The years that followed were defined by a strange limbo. The Phillips house was fixed in time. Her clothing still hang in the closet. Her room is untouched. Updating the case's website often with fresh details and requests for tips, Sharon attended every conference and workshop on missing individuals and connected with other families caught in the same horrible waiting. After 20 years of service to the department, Detective Wu retired in 2011. Detective Sarah Chen, his successor, offered a fresh point of view but the same relentless commitment. She scanned the case files, added Brittany's data into national databases, and guaranteed proper preservation of physical evidence as forensic technology developed. Cold cases aren't cold, Chen remarked to reporters on Brittany's 10th anniversary of her disappearance. They're only waiting for the appropriate breakthrough. That breakthrough appeared impossibly remote. With the current technology in 2004, the forensic data gathered had been examined with disappointingly little outcome. The cigarette butts from close to the maintenance shed had DNA, but they were useless without a system match. David Phillips passed away in 2016, 12 years after his daughter went missing. The stress and grief had taken its toll, showing his heart illness that ultimately claimed him on a cold February morning. At his funeral, Detective Chen placed a case file on the coffin, promising that the search would go on. Sharon, then in her 60s, continued alone, and her resolve remained undiminished. She broadened her advocacy by collaborating with other missing persons families and lobbying the state legislature for more resources for cold case investigations. Her life had been consumed by Brittany's case, transforming her grief into purpose. 17 years had passed by 2021. The case had outlasted many detectives, 2 police chiefs, and several promises. The physical terrain, too, had shifted. Brittany had been going, the rapid trip was torn and restored. Renovation of the elementary school took place. Knowing Brittany as only a local catastrophe, new families started to settle down in the area. Something was about to change, though, in a little office at the Broken Arrow Police Department. Beginning systematically review unsolved cases, the newly formed Tulsa County Cold Case Division, set up in late 2020, was about to capture investigators equipped with forensic tools that hadn't been in use in 2004. Cold Case head Detective Rachel Morano opened the Phillips file in January 2021 and saw instant potential. The evidence preservation had been fantastic. The cigarette butts, the hoodie, even dirt samples from the maintenance shed area, all correctly kept and accessible for current analysis.
This is precisely the kind of case that gains from developments in DNA technology. Moreno told her team, evidence that couldn't tell us much 17 years ago might now be able to give us names. The investigation was about to be revived. Before switching to cold cases after 15 years of homicides, Detective Rachel Moreno, from patience and perseverance comes methodical work, from applying new technologies to ancient proof. She formally reopened the Brittany Phillips case in March 2021. Her partner, forensic analyst Kevin Torres, had extensive DNA recovery training and genetic genealogy knowledge. Together, they approached the 17-year-old case with a systematic approach. As they reviewed the inventory, Torres explained that the original investigators did outstanding job preserving evidence. Even when they lacked the ability to adequately examine it, they collected everything. That foresight is about to pay off. The cigarette butts found near the elementary school maintenance shed in October 2004 had been tested using the methods available at the time. DNA had been extracted and a basic profile created, but with no match in the CODIS database, the results had been filed away. Now, 17 years later, those same samples could be subjected to far more sophisticated analysis. In April 2021, the evidence was forwarded to a specialized Dallas lab, which had developed sophisticated DNA extraction and amplification methods. More significantly, the profiles obtained could be added to genetic genealogy databases, therefore creating absolutely new investigation paths. "We're not searching for direct matches anymore," Moreno told Sharon Phillips over a thorough phone conversation. "Call in May. We can locate family members, create family trees, triangulately back to possible suspects who had never been in the system." Sharon had heard promises before. 17 years of dashed expectations had taught her to guard her heart. But something in Moreno's voice, a calm certainty rather than idle optimism, made her let herself the tiniest flicker of chance. The Dallas lab verified they had successfully retrieved and amplified DNA profiles from 2 of the cigarette on June 3, 2021. The profiles were comprehensive enough for genealogical analysis, containing enough markers to identify familial relationships across multiple generations. Within hours, the profiles were uploaded to GEDmatch, a public genetic genealogy database where users voluntarily share their DNA information. The system began its algorithmic search, comparing the unknown profiles against hundreds of thousands of users, looking for shared genetic segments that would indicate family connections. On the first day, they had matches: distant relatives, third and fourth cousins, people who shared common ancestors with the unidentified person who had left DNA at the crime scene. Though none of them were suspects, they were breadcrumbs leading back through generations to a family tree that would eventually narrow to a name. Barbara Winters, an expert who had helped solve several cold cases across the country, was given the task of genetic genealogy research. She began the demanding task of constructing family trees, starting with the known cousins and moving backwards to identify common forefathers, then ahead once more through descendants, looking for people who would have been in northeastern Oklahoma in October 2004. "Think of it as developing a net that tightens gradually," Winters said. "Every new relative we find adds yet another strand. In time, we will weave something strong enough to catch our suspect." By July, the net was getting tighter. The genealogical study had traced the DNA to a particular family line originating in rural Oklahoma. Some branches led to women immediately rejected, others to men too young or too old, or who had died before 2004. The process called for both scientific accuracy and human intuition. Winters had to negotiate complex family connections, take into account adoptions and non-paternity events, and balance privacy concerns with investigative need. Some family members consented to donate voluntary DNA samples to help narrow the field. Others declined, therefore necessitating research around the gaps. On August 12, 2021, the genealogy work targeted a limited collection of possibilities. 3 brothers, all living in Oklahoma in 2004, all within the proper age range. More genetic marker testing pointed towards the unknown DNA originated from the center brother, Carl Mitchell Vance, 56, who resides in Edmond, a suburb of Oklahoma City. Detective Moreno was nothing. She ran it first through every existing database. Carl Vance was 39 years old in October 2004, working as a regional sales representative for a business providing restaurant supplies. He had covered Tulsa County. He was a phantom in the system who had never garnered police attention. With no criminal history in Oklahoma, no arrests, no convictions, no even traffic violations. Torres started compiling a thorough profile. Job mandated him to visit customers all around northeastern Oklahoma, therefore giving valid grounds to be in Broken Arrow. Studying the paperwork strewn across his desk, Torres claimed he was quite average on paper, married since 1995, 2 children, consistent employment, homeowner, the kind of guy who merges into any neighborhood. But one detail stood out, sharp and important. Carl Vance had changed careers in December 2004, barely 2 months after Brittany vanished. He had abandoned the sales job that had taken him to Tulsa County, has landed a desk job with another business based completely in Oklahoma City. At the time, the decision had seemed sensible, a salary and stability increase, but now it looked like something else entirely. Moreno observed his removal from the area, got out of a job that required him to be in Broken Arrow. That's not proof, but it's suspicious behavior. The team needed confirmation before moving forward. They obtained authorization for covert DNA collection, a method allowing investigators for 3 weeks they conducted surveillance on Vance, waiting for the appropriate chance, then recovered discarded items from public areas without alerting the subject. On September 8, 2021, Vance stopped at a Starbucks in Edmond during lunch break, ordered coffee, worked on his laptop for 40 minutes, then departed.
The cup he dropped in public trash became the focus. Officers retrieved it right away. The lid was gently kept to capture any DNA from his lips. The cup was transported to the state lab with top urgency. The analysis took 72 hours. The lab director phoned Detective Moreno with results at 2:15 p.m. on September 11. The DNA from the coffee cup matched the DNA from the cigarette butt found close to the elementary school maintenance shed in October 2004. The statistical probability of coincidence was 1 in 8.4 trillion. Carl Mitchell Vance had been at the scene where Brittany Phillips's hoodie was discovered. After 17 years, Moreno made the call to Moreno that evening to Sharon Phillips. She painstakingly handled expectations while emphasizing the degree of what they had found. Sharon listened in quiet before posing one question. "Are you sure?" "We're sure," Moreno answered. "The DNA is definitive. Now we build the case for prosecution." As Sharon hung up the phone, she walked to Brittany's room and remained in the doorway. The porch light had burned outside for 17 years. Soon, it could finally be turned off. Carl Mitchell Vance had spent 56 years building a life of intended simplicity. His single-story home in Edmond was located on a calm cul-de-sac, with children on scooters down the sidewalk and American flags hung from balconies. Not perfect, but respectable, the lawn was kept short. Though the beige paint showed symptoms of age, there was no indication of neglect. Everything about the house murmured suburban invisibility. Neighbors described him in such vague ways that it could fit half the guys around the block. He was nice, but not really friendly. He was quiet, but not rude. He would wave when you looked at him, but he hardly ever started a chat. His wife, Linda, was more outgoing, joining book clubs and neighborhood meetings, while Carl stayed in the background. "I couldn't tell you anything memorable about him," said Terry Blackwell, who lived 2 doors down for 8 years. "That's what makes this so unsettling. He was just an ordinary guy, going to work and coming home." Born in 1965 in Ponca City, Oklahoma, Vance's childhood records showed nothing special. He was an average student with no behavior issues, did track in high school but never stood out. After he graduated in 1983, he went to community college for a year and a half, but dropped out to work full-time. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, he switched between sales jobs, selling everything from office supplies to insurance. His job record showed that he did okay, but never stood out. He was never let go, but he also did not get many promotions, living in that middle ground where nobody really noticed him. He married Linda Hobson in 1995 after meeting her at a church singles event in Oklahoma City. She was 32 and a kindergarten teacher who wanted to have kids. They had 2 children, a girl born in 1997 and a boy born in 1999. The family went to First Methodist Church sometimes, just enough to look like they believed, but not really getting involved. What investigators found most suspicious was Vance's habit of changing jobs. In 1998, he got a job with Premier Restaurant Supply, which meant a lot of travel around eastern Oklahoma. This gave him a reason to be in places like Broken Arrow, Tulsa, Bartlesville, and many small towns. He could say he was away for work whenever. Then, in December 2004, just 8 weeks after Brittany Phillips went missing, he suddenly switched to a new career. He took a 40% pay cut to become an operations coordinator at a medical billing company based only in Oklahoma City. This new job kept him at a desk, stopped all travel, and gave him no reason to go to northeastern Oklahoma. That fits a pattern of predator behavior, said Dr. Susan Mitchell, a forensic psychologist who was asked for help with the case. After someone does a big crime, a lot of criminals try to change their behavior in ways that make sense, but really, they just want to separate themselves from where they committed the crime. This gives them a way to hide while also dealing with the need to break away from what they did. The digging into Vance's past picked up speed in September 2021. Detectives Torres and Moreno put in long hours, working 16 hours a day to figure out what Vance did in October 2004, trying to find any link between him and Brittany Phillips beyond just luck. Video from traffic cameras in 2004 was no longer available, but work records showed that Vance had meetings in Tulsa on October 11th and 13th, right before and after Brittany went missing. On October 12th, however, he had no appointments at all, which was unusual for him since his schedule was usually full. His wife, Linda, when they approached her carefully about an unrelated issue, confirmed that Carl had worked late that Tuesday in October. She remembered this because it was her son's birthday the following day, and she was upset that he didn't help with the party plans. She recalled that he came home around 9, tired and not very talkative. Further investigation revealed something chilling that made Moreno very uneasy. In 1989, 15 years before Brittany disappeared, a 19-year-old named Jennifer Moss went missing from a parking lot in Norman, Oklahoma.
Her body was discovered 3 days later in a rural area, and the case was never solved. At that time, Carl Vance was 24, living in Norman and working at a sporting goods store just a few blocks from where Jennifer was last seen. Moreno told her team, "We should look into all unsolved cases in places where Vance has lived or worked. He might not just be a one-time criminal." The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation started comparing unsolved missing person cases with the places Vance had been in over the last 30 years. The findings hinted at a troubling chance that Brittany Phillips might not have been the only person he hurt. However, they needed to focus on the case that they could clearly prove. The DNA evidence linked Vance to the crime scene, but the lawyers wanted more. They needed to find out how he met Brittany, why he was in that exact spot, and create a story that would convince a jury without doubt. Detective Moreno got search orders for Vance's house, cars, and electronic devices. They needed to make the arrest perfectly and serve the orders at the same time to stop any evidence from being destroyed. District Attorney Raymond Foster put together his team to prepare for what would turn into one of the most famous cases in Tulsa County's history. On September 22, 2021, at 4:30 in the morning, special teams got in place around Vance's house in Edmond. Detective Moreno walked up to the front door with 2 FBI agents, feeling nervous but focused. Exactly at 5, she knocked hard. "Police search warrant." The lights turned on inside. She heard footsteps coming. The door opened to show Carl Vance wearing sweatpants and an old Oklahoma State t-shirt, looking both confused and annoyed. But that changed as soon as Moreno spoke. "Carl Mitchell Vance, you are under arrest for the kidnapping and murder of Brittany Ann Phillips on October 12, 2004. For a short moment, Vance's expression changed. It wasn't confusion or denial, but recognition. He knew exactly who Brittany Phillips was. He had always known. He didn't say anything while the officers put handcuffs on him.
His wife appeared behind him and started asking panicked questions that nobody answered. As Vance was taken to the waiting car, neighbors came onto their porches, seeing the breakdown of the careful image he had kept up for 17 years. Inside the house, the search team made some important finds. In the garage, they found a locked toolbox that Vance had told his wife never to touch. Inside were newspaper articles about Brittany's disappearance from October and November 2004, all safely kept in plastic covers. They also found 7 cigarettes of the same kind that came from the crime scene and a small silver earring that Sharon Phillips would later say belonged to her daughter. He kept mementos. He had saved pieces of his crime for 17 years, unable to fully move on, never guessing that science would one day reconnect with the past and uncover him. The arrest of Carl Mitchell Vance sent shockwaves through both Edmond and Broken Arrow. Local news channels broke into regular shows to share the big news. The Tulsa World published a special issue featuring a photo of Brittany at her graduation next to Vance's mugshot. His ordinary life changed completely to something dark and serious in the bright lights of the county jail. Sharon Phillips got the news during an early morning phone call from Detective Moreno, then sat by herself in her kitchen as the sun came up. After 17 years of waiting, searching, false leads, and heartbreaks, the waiting was finally over. She called her son-in-law to wake up her daughter Janet and share the news. Then she went to the cemetery where David was buried. "We found him," she quietly said as she knelt next to the gravestone. "You can rest now." The legal process moved forward carefully. On September 23rd, Vance appeared in court for the first time through a video call, looking blank and unreadable. Judge Patricia Donovan decided against granting bail, pointing out the serious nature of the charges and evidence suggesting there might be more victims. Vance spoke just once to confirm that he understood the charges of kidnapping and first-degree murder. That afternoon, District Attorney Raymond Foster held a press conference on the courthouse steps, accompanied by Detective Moreno and Sheriff Thomas Wade. Foster stated that after 17 years, justice is finally close for Brittany Phillips and her family. The progress in forensic science, along with hard work from the investigators, has led us to identify and arrest the person behind this awful crime. The prosecution team spent the next few months preparing their case. The DNA evidence was solid and clearly showed Vance was at the crime scene, but Foster understood that juries needed more than just numbers and chances. They needed a clear story that linked everything together to show guilt. The defense team, led by lawyer Marcus Webb, had a tough job ahead. The DNA evidence was definitely strong. Their plan was to question how the evidence had been handled over 17 years, wondering if it could have been contaminated, and arguing that just being near a school didn't prove murder without a body. "Where is Brittany Phillips?" Webb challenged during the pre-trial talks. "The state has DNA from a certain location. They have some evidence that shows there was a chance for something to happen, but they can't find the victim or really show what happened to her." It was a reasonable legal point, but it was risky because it highlighted that Brittany's body was missing. The defense reminded everyone why they were in court, focusing on her as a person instead of letting her become just a name. In March 2022, a grand jury charged someone. The trial was planned for August, which gave both sides time to get ready. As summer came, the prosecution got a surprise advantage. Linda Vance, Carl's wife for 27 years, agreed to be a witness. She was deeply affected by the arrest and struggled to connect the husband she knew with the terrible person now shown to be his true self. In private talks with the prosecutors, she gave information that helped clarify the timeline. Carl came home late on October 12, 2004, and he was acting really quiet that night, saying he was stressed about work. His sudden job change a few weeks later was explained as him wanting a better work-life balance. "I didn't know," Linda told the prosecutors, crying. "I swear I didn't know." But when she thought about it now, she recalled times when he seemed distant and like he was carrying a heavy burden that she couldn't see. The trial started on August 15, 2022, nearly 18 years after Brittany disappeared. The courtroom was full every day with onlookers, journalists, retired detectives who had worked on the case, and local people who had always remembered the 18-year-old girl who went missing while walking to a convenience store. During the trial, the prosecution called 47 witnesses over 3 weeks. Forensic specialists explained the DNA evidence in simple terms for the jurors. Detective Moreno went through the investigation timeline step by step. Sharon Phillips talked about her daughter's daily life, her plans for that night, and the hoodie found near the maintenance shed. The most impactful moment happened when the prosecutors showed items discovered in Vance's locked toolbox. The preserved newspaper articles displayed his obsessive interest in the case. The cigarette brands matched those found at the crime scene, and there was a small silver butterfly earring that looked just like one in Brittany's senior picture. He held on to pieces of her, Foster told the jury in closing arguments. For 17 years, he couldn't fully let these things go. They are the proof of his wrongdoing, markers from a crime he believed he had escaped from. The defense presented their arguments over 3 days, claiming there was reasonable doubt, questioning how the evidence was managed, and offering different possible explanations. But the pile of evidence against him was too much to ignore. On September 8, 2022, after 6 hours of discussion, the jury reached their decision. Guilty on every charge. Sharon Phillips shut her eyes when the decision was announced, while her daughter Janet held her hand tightly. At the back of the courtroom, retired Detective Wu cried openly, feeling his promise had finally been kept. 2 weeks later, Judge Donovan gave Carl Mitchell Vance a life sentence in prison with no chance for parole. Before handing down the sentence, she allowed Sharon to speak to the court. Sharon stood there, her voice steady, even with tears in her eyes. For 18 years, my daughter has been gone. You took her from us, from her future, and from all the life she should have lived. I will never understand how you could do this, but I refuse to allow your evil to control the rest of my life. She paused and looked right at Vance. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to find peace. Vance didn't react, just stared ahead as he was taken out of the courtroom. The resolution of Brittany's case led to changes all over Oklahoma. The Tulsa County Cold Case Division grew, gaining money for 3 more detectives. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation created a special unit for genetic genealogy. Within a year and a half, 4 more cold cases were solved using similar methods. Sharon Phillips turned her sadness into action, starting the Brittany Phillips Foundation to help with cold case investigations and aid families of missing people.
The Foundation's first action paid for advanced DNA testing for 6 unsolved cases in the state. In Broken Arrow, the elementary school where Brittany's hoodie had been found was renamed Phillips Memorial Elementary. During a ceremony with hundreds present, a garden was planted on the school grounds with a bench that had Brittany's name and the words, "Gone, but never forgotten. Justice delayed, but finally delivered." The Oklahoma State Medical Examiner kept looking for Brittany's remains, following tips based on Vance's known whereabouts and property. Sharon hoped that one day she could bring her daughter home to finally rest next to her father. The porch light that had been on for 17 years was finally turned off after Vance was sentenced. In its place, Sharon put up another light, one that would shine on a plaque that said, "In memory of Brittany Ann Phillips, 1986-2004, and in honor of all those still waiting for answers." Detective Rachel Moreno kept Brittany's picture on her desk to remind her why working on cold cases was important. She explained in an interview 6 months after the sentencing that every unsolved case affects a family stuck in uncertainty. Solving a case helps free them from that situation. Brittany's case showed that justice can still happen no matter how much time passes. At the Broken Arrow Police Department, Brittany's case file was moved to the Resolved Cases section.
This box included 18 years of investigation reports, forensic tests, witness accounts, and the evidence that finally uncovered the truth. It was not just about one solved case, but also about keeping a promise to a family, a community, and a young woman whose life ended too soon. Time might help those who do bad things, but Brittany Phillips' case showed it can also lead to their downfall. Science progresses, databases expand, investigators keep pushing forward, and eventually, after many years or even decades, the truth comes to light. Now 73, Sharon Phillips spends her time supporting other families, speaking at events, and running a foundation in her daughter's honor. She has assisted 6 other families in getting answers about their own cold cases, providing comfort and empathy that only someone with similar experiences can give. Brittany's story doesn't end with her death or with justice being served, Sharon mentioned during our last interview. Her legacy lives on in every case that gets solved because the investigators didn't give up. Every family that finds answers, every improvement in forensic science, she continues to make a difference and impact lives just in ways no one could have imagined back in 2004. The silver butterfly earring that was in Vance's toolbox is now in Sharon's jewelry box. It was given back to the family after the trial was over. Sometimes she touches it and thinks about her daughter, who used to wear it, a young woman with soft dreams who deserved a lot more than the brief time that was taken away from her. Brittany Ann Phillips finally received justice, but it took 17 years. Even though it was late, it showed others who are still lost in their struggles that they can still find hope. They are still waiting for their own calls at 3:42 in the morning, still believing that the truth, no matter how long it takes, will eventually come out on top.